On Friday, I published my guide to Chinese artificial intelligence. It became one of the best performing videos on my YouTube channel. 48 hours later, it is already out of date. So Alibaba have announced Qwen3.8, a 2.4 trillion parameter model that is apparently only beaten by Claude Fable 5. But right now, that is a company claim. The model is only a preview. The open weights is coming in the near future, but it's not going to run locally on your device. So again, I want to dive into Chinese artificial intelligence and talk about what is real, what is hype, what you are actually going to do about it, and in general, model fatigue. So I actually had in my WhatsApp group, and I'm going to put it up here. It is pretty overwhelming, Kyle. How do you exactly distinguish which model is best for which task? Honestly, I haven't used any of the Chinese models yet, but I've seen some positive feedback and results from them, yet I am still confused. Also, having a much larger parameter count doesn't necessarily mean it's a better model than the leading one, right? I'm sure people need to test them across all kinds of real-life scenarios to determine that, if I'm not wrong. So that is a message from Lujian inside of my WhatsApp group, and I thought it would be good to address this as a whole because there are a huge number of models coming out. We had Kimi K3 a couple of days ago, followed by Qwen3.8 over the weekend. And if you are paying attention, you're probably incredibly overwhelmed by all of this. Should you be changing? Should you be using ChatGPT, Claude, moving on to a Chinese model? What should you be doing? I want to cut through some of that because it's very noisy at the moment. So Qwen3.8 is launching and going open weights soon. We'll talk about open weights in a moment. A massive 4.2 trillion parameters, big model. This model is continuously evolving. We believe it's one of the most powerful models available today, compatible to leading frontier AI models, second only to Fable 5. Fascinating. This is the new benchmark. This is what everybody compares themselves to. Notice that very few people are saying we are better than Fable 5, but they don't really need to be. They just need to be available, which Fable 5 is not, and they need to be cost effective. So if you can go into the market and say, hey, we have something that's pretty much as good as Fable 5, but you can actually use it without having to remortgage your house, that is a very strong pitch because Fable 5 is a hell of a model. And I'm sorry to anyone who lost it today because they're not on a $100 or $200 a month plan. You don't have to wait to test it. Just now, Qwen3.8 Max Preview, not the full release, made its debut on Alibaba's token plan, Coda and Coda Work. Be amongst the first to try it out. And then interestingly, they have a English language or an international and a Chinese page. You can come here and you can see the plans. So we've got about 40 Kwai, 140 Kwai and 500 Kwai yuan, or the international, the American version, $6, $18 and $68 on their cloud plan. So new model, Qwen3.8. Continuing to add a lot more confusion. Should we be using Kimi K3? Should we be using Qwen? Should we be using DeepSeek, which is probably going to be arriving very, very soon as well? Or should we be sticking with ChatGPT and Claude? It depends. So a couple of things. When a model launches, we have a post like this, which is an announcement. This is just saying, hey, we have a new model. This is the size of it. We think it's very good. This is internal. This is them saying it's very good. Do not believe what a company tells you about their own model. This goes for OpenAI, this goes for Anthropic, this goes for absolutely everyone. They are, of course, going to tell you it's the best model in the world. Doesn't really matter. You need to wait until it is available and you need to go and test it yourself. And until that happens, you are not going to know whether it fits your workflows. Even when there are independent tests, when there are benchmarks like artificial analysis, you have to take them with a pinch of salt because ultimately it depends what work you are doing. You need to think about your workflows. Open weights mean it will be downloadable. You will be able to go onto a site like Hugging Face or potentially onto their own site, wherever they host it, and download the full models, the full weights of that model onto your local computer. Now, that does not mean you will be able to run it locally, especially a 2.4 trillion parameter model. You basically need a mini data center to do that. So for the most part, most people who will be using this are going to be using it directly through the cloud. So coming to a platform like Qwen Cloud and paying their $20 a month to use it, or through a service like OpenRouter. However, if you are running a business, if you are running a university, if you have access to a lot of compute, you can technically download the open weights and run it on your local server racks or data center. That means you can have it fully local and fully private. It will be not connected to Qwen's or Alibaba's servers in the same way that Kimi K3, when they release open weights, you could run it locally and have a fully secure artificial intelligence yourself. That's really exciting, even if for the most part it is not practical for most people. So 2.4 trillion parameters is the size of the model. Now, as the person in my WhatsApp, Lucian, asked, is size everything? No, it is not. But generally, the larger the model, the more advanced it's going to be. This is basically the number, I'm not going to go into the details, the number of parameters inside of the model. And as we get bigger and bigger and bigger models, we get more and more intelligence. We aren't 100% sure why that happens, but the scaling laws are working so far. So we just add more data, train larger models, using more GPUs, using more electricity, and they continuously get more capable. So 2.4 trillion is serious size. So this would be the raw weights. And if you run it at 4-bit, you might require 1.2 terabytes worth at least of RAM, or GPU RAM in this case. That is before the overheads of like everything else that you're running around the model. So you cannot run this on a laptop. You cannot run this on your home computer. You are going to require a server rack or a mini data center to run a model like this. However, China and their commitment to open weight models and to releasing these to the world is very different to the game that Anthropic are playing. Anthropic is saying this stuff is dangerous. You're not allowed to have it. We need to keep it safe and secure, and then we're going to charge you an awful lot of money for it. So when China is coming along with models that are pretty much as good as Fable, so pretty much as good as Mythos as well, and saying, here you go nuts, that undercuts Anthropic's whole play here. Anthropic's focus on safety, whether you believe it's for marketing or whether you believe it's sincere, it's probably a bit of both, is entirely undercut by the Chinese lab saying, yeah, sod it, we ball, here you go, have fun. So what does this mean for you? Model overwhelm is very real, extremely real, and it is tempting to want to chase down the new model, try everything out, and always be on the cutting edge. However, most of it is noise, especially if you're spending a lot of time on Twitter, if you're on social media, if you're watching people like me. They're probably all screaming at the moment, Claude is dead, Chinese AI has killed it, etc. Ignore the noise. What you should be using is the model that allows you to do the work. If you're always chasing the new shiny object, you will not get anything done. So when something gets announced, just wait for a bit. When you see a model like this, an announcement like this, saying that, hey, we're launching and it's really big and it's second only to Fable 5, the exciting thing to do, and we've got 7 million views on here. I'm sure a lot of people clicked on here immediately, signed up, paid their money and started testing it out. That's fine. The money is the money, but you are also wasting your time potentially, because it may not be the best thing since sliced bread. So I would generally say just wait a little bit. Wait until the actual model is out. So this one is preview. So you are going to be testing it. That's entirely fine if you want to be extremely on the cutting edge, but remember that you are basically a guinea pig at this point. So maybe you wait a little bit. Same with like DeepSeek. We're currently in the preview. We will have a full release very soon. And then if you do decide to play around with it, you need to test it yourself. I highly recommend testing it on tasks that you know that Opus or Fable or GPT 5.6 Soul are good at, testing it on comparable tasks. So you're going to run the same task on 2 different models and see how they do. That's generally the only way that we can actually evaluate whether it's going to be useful for us. And if it is useful, then you can think about putting it into your workflow. Ideally, you're not ripping everything out. If you have workflows that are using Codex or using Claude Code, you're not destroying all of them and replacing them with Kimi. However, if you are using something like an AI brain, this is something I've talked about and given guides on over on my website, AI with Kyle, or on the YouTube channel, then you can actually move between models relatively simply because you have a centralized repository of all of your data, all of your information, and all of your workflows in one place, all being run by agents, files, and readmes, etc. So you can technically plug in a new model and get rolling on those workflows very, very quickly. But all of this depends on it not only being as good, but being better. So what's the point about replacing GPT 5.6 Soul with the Chinese model if it is only just about as good. Yes, you might save some money, but you are losing a lot of time switching over your workflows. And probably in a couple of weeks or a month or so, we'll have a new release of ChatGPT. We'll have a new release of Fable, a new Opus. We'll probably have Opus 5 this week. That's the rumor at the moment. So what are you going to do at that point? Are you going to rip all of your work out again and then flee back to the original model, only to do that again when DeepSeek comes out? It's just a waste of time, because you're always chasing the shiniest new object. Instead, I would only switch models, I would only switch providers if there is a substantial increase in capability at the same cost or lower. Then you might want to look at it. But otherwise, you spend all of your time chasing the best and not actually doing the work. So if you are convinced that you must go and try a new model, then what I'd recommend is pick a couple of real tasks that you do on a daily basis. I can't scroll down, that's annoying. On a daily basis, and go ahead and run them with the new model. That's going to allow you to compare quality. It's going to allow you to compare how long they take, the cost, and whether there are failures. And if it is genuinely better, then yeah, sure, absolutely think about putting it into your workflow. But do not do so just because everybody on Twitter is saying that you must. You have to do this based on your own independent analysis and whether or not it's going to be useful for your workflow. Most of the time, it will not be worth the additional effort. So that was my main takeaway in my group was, hey, look, generally, it makes sense just to stick with the model, to stick with the workflows that you're using right now, unless there is a big reason to rock the boat and to move on to another model, onto another provider. Generally, you can get more work done by sticking with one provider, knowing that they're going to continuously release new, better models every single month, rather than spending weeks and weeks wasting time moving to someone, then moving back and forward. That is my advice to most people, unless you require the absolute cutting edge all of the time. That is just going to be far more effective for your general productivity, your business, your income, and let's be honest, your sanity as well. So if you found this useful, make sure you're subscribed to aiwithkyle.com. You can also follow me on YouTube, where I'm putting up these longer form guides, as well as on TikTok, Instagram, and all the various other places talking about artificial intelligence, helping you keep up to date, and most importantly, use artificial intelligence to start and grow businesses and actually generate an income from this rather than watching from the sidelines. So again, aiwithkyle.com, that's where you can sign up to my newsletter and learn a lot more.